Co-host, are you able to, so Zoom has, I have lost my webinar button.
You're muted, Abby. Were you?
Hello?
Hi.
Hi. So it looks like it's recording, so I was assuming that
Okay. Yeah,
the
we are
webinar has
live.
begun.
All right. Thank you, everyone, and welcome to the Nexus 2025 Interdisciplinary Conference. Our apologies for the slight delay in technical broadcasting. We are actually live streaming this conference around the world. And so connecting with YouTube takes a little bit of time, and there's some logistics in the background. My name is Dr. Jackie Linder. I am the founder and conference chair for Nexus 2025, and I am delighted to have all of you joining us. So we have participants from all around the world. We have 78 presenters and 58 presentations from 25 countries. One of the things that we really pride ourselves here at City University is the diversity of our faculty and student body. And so what I would like to do is invite all of the moderators, as well as all the presenters, when they are speaking, when they first join their presentation, I invite you to introduce yourself in your birth language, because language is very, very important. And it is part of how we identify in terms of our culture, and our language, our birth language, is one of the places where our identity is located. So even though this conference is in English, I would really like to include and hear the music of languages from around the world. I'm going to hand off to my co-chair, Dr. Michael Carrero, to continue with the welcome.
Moroi Makadi Mesen, welcome. Quite happy to be participating in this conference, and we have been working over the last few weeks to prepare this, and I'm a member of the organizing committee. Yes, and I now hand over to my colleague here, Dr. Domingo.
Thank you. I'm Dr. Joel Domingo. Kumusta kayo? Amin. I greet you in the language of Ilocano from the Philippines. Again, I'm Dr. Joel Domingo. I'm the Director of Research at City University in Seattle, Washington, in the United States. I welcome you to this wonderful conference, and I look forward to this day today. I will pass it on back to Berhanu, Dr. Berhanu Demeke, back to Canada.
ጤና ይስጥልኝ እንኳን ደህና መጣችሁ My name is Berhanu Demeke. I am in Edmonton, Canada. I'm part of the organizing committee. I welcome everybody very, very enthusiastically and looking forward to great presentations and great event. I now hand it to Abby.
Hello, everybody. I'm Dr. Abby Nubla-Kung. I am one of the directors at the Research Institute. And mabuhay to you all. And that is from my birth language of Tagalog in the Philippines. And now I hand it back over to Dr. Linder.
Okay, fantastic. So we are right on time, which makes me very happy. The first presentation to open our conference focused on resilience in the contemporary world is titled Resilience Amid the Reading Crisis, Strategies Supporting Extensive Reading in Rural and Primary Schools. I'm going to hand it over to the presentation team to load their slides, and we will begin. As we are waiting, one of the things that oh, here we go. Go ahead, Dr. Mokoena. We are not able to hear you.
Apologies, colleagues. Are you able to see my screen?
We can see your screen. You're not in slideshow mode, so you might want to expand to slideshow mode.
Okay, just a moment. Is it okay now?
No, it's still, there you go. Perfect.
Okay, thank you. Dumelang, I am greeting you in my home language, which is called Sesotho. It is one of the 12 official languages spoken here in South Africa. My name is Dr. Mosebetsi Mokoena. I'm from Johannesburg, South Africa, from the Wits School of Education. My colleague here is Ms. Ayanda Ngongwane, who is unfortunately struggling to join us now with network and things like that because it is raining this side. So as soon as she joins, we will continue together. So our study is titled Resilience Amid the Reading Crisis. We have done a systematic review of strategies for supporting extensive reading in rural primary schools. Perhaps as a start, we have to give context to South Africa. South Africa is located right there at the tip of the African continent. Unfortunately, we are facing what we have nationally coined as a reading crisis here, where our primary school learners are having difficulties in reading, especially reading for comprehension. A lot of studies have been done locally, and they've all shown that our learners are really struggling with reading, whether be it in English or be it in their home languages. So they are really struggling with reading comprehension. And the problem is more pronounced, unfortunately, in rural schools. And one of the contributory factors is that many of our rural schools lack resources like your libraries. They are not there. Even in instances where there are libraries, we'll find out that they are not really well staffed. They don't have books. They don't have librarians, things like that. So another contributing factor has been the issue of teachers. You know, as universities, we seem to be producing teachers who are struggling to teach our learners how to read. So that problem is continuing, and there have been, of course, some interventions that the government has, come up with in an attempt to address this problem. However, as I've just said, the problem still continues. So our study, we said, since we have this problem, how about we do a systematic literature review just to see what is it that parents and other teachers are doing, in an attempt to support what we call extensive reading, where we try to inculcate in our children, in our learners, the culture of reading. So our study looks at, we try to explore strategies used by parents and teachers to support extensive reading for English FAL in rural primary schools. In this context, English FAL is our learners here, they learn English as a first additional language. So it is not their home language, it's the second language. In some other context, you refer to it as English as a foreign language. But in our context in South Africa, we refer to it as English as a first additional language. So they learn English as a second language. But it is also important for you colleagues to understand that in South Africa, we do things a little bit differently in that in grades 1, 2, and 3, our learners, those in primary schools, they are taught in their mother tongue, in Sesotho, in isiZulu, and all these other languages. But immediately when they get to the 4th grade, the language of teaching and learning changes, it becomes now English. So everything that they learn, starting from the 4th grade onwards, they are taught in English. Hence, we are calling it English as a first additional language. So that has sort of contributed in a way to the reading crisis that the country is facing right now. So our research questions for this study were, what strategies do parents use to support extensive reading? And then what strategies do teachers use to support extensive reading? So the objectives of this of our study are as follows. We wanted to explore those strategies that are used by both parents and teachers to support extensive reading of those learners who's who are learning in whose English, whose home language, unfortunately, is not English. So we looked into the literature to find out what is this extensive reading about. We know that it involves, reading a lot of material. You read that for pleasure, for information, but importantly for overall comprehension. When I started here, I did explain that our learners, both national and international studies, show that they can read, but they cannot understand what they are reading. So we sort of thought that perhaps let's look into the area of extensive reading. How is it that teachers are supporting it? What role do parents play in supporting this type of reading strategy? And then we looked at the benefits thereof, which include improvement in vocabulary, reading fluency, and things like that, which most of our learners really lack, as many studies have shown so far. For our paper, we used the sociocultural theory as a lens through which we looked at our study. We looked at issues of zone of proximal development. We looked at parents and teachers as mediators, those who can help in this context with helping learners, by providing support to them to read for pleasure, which is reading for extensive reading, where we want them to learn, to get used to reading, and then so that they gain more vocabulary. As they do that, they will, of course, we believe that they will, learn to read with comprehension later on, which is, of course, supported by many studies. For the methodology, we used a systematic literature review methodology, and then we were guided by the Prisma framework, where we started with identifying articles. We used the Web of Science as the database, and we looked for those articles that had been published locally in South Africa. And unfortunately, we could not find many studies that have been done locally. Studies on extensive reading and the role of parents and teachers there. So in South Africa, the issue of extensive reading is still developing because, as we've said, rural schools in particular, they face particular challenges that relate to resources and things like that. So research is still emerging in South Africa. So we analyzed our data thematically. We'll talk about that later. We focus on the studies that have been published between 2015 and 2025, and we developed an inclusion-exclusion criteria as is required by the systematic literature review methodology. And then at the end, we analyzed everything, and then we came up with these key findings. That although many parents, especially those in rural areas, may appear to be so uneducated or they are often portrayed in research as people who are not interested in literacy development. We have found through literature review that they do support extensive reading by storytelling. They do tell stories. They do read to their children. They even help with homework. So that way they are sort of trying to play a role in supporting that extensive reading. They even read with their children, even though they themselves are not, that very much educated. And then for teachers, we have found that they do use, some of the teachers, they do try to implement these extensive reading programs in their schools. They may have such programs in their schools where, they try to hold some sessions here and there to help learners to motivate them and to give books where they are books. Because in most cases, as I've stated here when I started, that rural schools do not have many resources. And in some instances, we found out that some schools, the teachers at these other schools, they try to build classroom libraries. They will have what we call reading boxes, where, they would develop some boxes where kids would just come during break. They just get into the classroom and, start to read those books.
4
That
minutes.
way, okay, thank you. That way, they're trying to inculcate the culture of reading, as it is often the case with extensive reading. So what we recommend, based on the findings of our research, is there should be a strong teacher-parent partnership, especially in schools. As when I started here, I said, in many cases, rural parents are often viewed negatively by schools. So I think that if we build this partnership between the home and the school, that can go a long way in helping, in terms of fostering extensive reading in primary schools. And there should, of course, be investment in the reading infrastructure. As when I started here, I said many of our schools, especially rural schools, do not have functional libraries. So if perhaps we can have more investment in infrastructure, in libraries and things like that, that can help in, of course, inculcating this culture of reading in our learners, with, of course, the aim of getting rid of this reading crisis that our country is facing right now. Those are some of the recommendations that we came up with from our study. We are making a call and saying that there should be a community-based effort. Parents, teachers, and the community at large need to come to play, in addressing this crisis that we are facing now as a country. And we also make a call for collaboration among policymakers, educators, and other researchers like ourselves as universities to come down to the community level and try by all means to help learners in rural primary schools to address the issue of reading crisis that we are facing right now. I think that would be all from me, colleagues. As I see we still have a minute to go, maybe I'll take questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mokoena. We will keep questions until the Q&A session. You've given us
Okay.
an extra minute and a half, so that means we'll have a little bit more time at the end, which is excellent. I have several questions
Okay.
that I have scribbled down that then I will take them up with you during the Q&A session. So now we're going to move to a pre-recorded session that is currently being loaded. And the topic is Resilient Science Learning, Virtual Labs, AR and VR, and Inclusive Education Tech in Indian Schools. Elizabeth, there's no audio. While Elizabeth works on her tech issue, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about. Oh, we're good to go.
Thank
Okay.
you to the Nexus organizers and fellow delegates. I'm Dr. Anupam Gupta. Today I'll speak on resilient science learning, virtual labs, AR, VR, inclusive tech in Indian schools. Over the next 10 minutes, I'll share evidences from DIKSHA, which is Diksha, virtual labs in AR, VR, augmented reality and virtual reality pilots. I'll also explain how immersive technologies sustain continuity and enable adaptive pedagogy and offers practical equity-centered measures for policy and practice. This is about the India's edtech landscape. India's edtech sector has grown rapidly since 2020, driven by household aspiration, expanding digital infrastructure, and demand for personalized learning. However, funding constraints, government concerns, and uneven access mean that investments in immersive technologies must be designed with equity, curricular relevance, and sustainability in mind rather than novelty alone. This is about the policy and budget signals. NEP 2020 calls for a national digital repository of high quality resources, including simulations and immersive content. Recent budgets have signaled support for AR VR in schools. Our work aims to convert these signals into curriculum aligned AR VR modules and virtual labs that include transparent feedback mechanisms for quality improvement. Let's talk about why immersive tech matters in the classroom. Globally, systems are shifting towards experimental student-centered learning. In India, large classes and limited lab access make hands-on science difficult to sustain. Therefore, virtual labs, AR and VR can recreate inquiry-rich experiences, visualize abstract phenomena, and extend personalized competency-based learning to remote and especially under-resourced schools. Immersive technologies such as virtual labs, augmented reality, and virtual reality provide a scalable way to recreate practical and inquiry-rich experiences. This allows students to visualize abstract phenomena, run repeatable experiments, and visit virtual field sites without the need for costly infrastructure. Uh, why resilient science learning is important. Science depends on repeated procedural practice and inquiry. When labs, reagents, or trained staffs are unavailable, inquiry collapses, and losses disproportionately fall on girls, first generation, and linguistically marginalized learners. So resilience must secure continuity, enable adaptive pedagogy, and plan deliberate recovery. Let's talk about the technology integrated with pedagogy. Resilience is a socio-technical concept. Technology must be coupled with curriculum alignment, teacher mediation, and local governance. Curriculum aligned virtual labs and localized AR/VR, when accompanied by teacher support, recreate procedural practice, provide repeatable experiments, and reduce language barriers. Now, virtual labs have four mechanisms. Virtual lab offer repeatability to reduce misconceptions, provide safe access where physical labs are unavailable. Also offer formative logs, dashboards for targeted remediation, and feature a scalable interactive simulation that link abstract concepts to observable outcomes, preserving continuity and instant recovery after disruption. Let's talk about the AR and VR classroom roles. AR overlays digital content or real scenes, while VR creates fully immersive environments. Both enable the exploration of 3D phenomena, boost engagements, and improve spatial reasonings. Pilot paired with teacher scripts report measurable gains, helping multilingual learners access complex topics, etc., in category visual terms. Let's talk about the inclusive tech as a design principle. Inclusion must be default. Screen readers, audio narration, caption, multilingual interfaces, and offline packagings are essential. Tools must align with the curriculum outcomes, and teacher training, coaching cycles, and micro credentials are necessary to ensure that accessibility features are effectively integrated into the classroom practice. This is about the school categories and readiness in India. PMC schools, DMS, and CBC schools are majorly working in the tech sector, EdTech sector, having a VR headset lab. So if we personally talk about the CBSE schools, among 27,107 schools, independent private schools have a higher baseline readiness, while government, rural, and special category schools in targeted funding, shared device models, and stronger PD. A scale up should begin with a readiness map and resource allocation by school category. This is about the CBSE middle school skill modules. CBSE introduced 11 middle school modules in 2020, co-created with teachers and industry. Notable technology modules including coding, digital citizenship, AR, VR, and AI, with more modules and ISRO and Space Research Organization's collaboration. They're planning to build early digital fluency and pathways into STEM. This is about the scope of middle school modules. The skill set combines AI, coding, and data science with digital citizenship, mass media literacy, and vocational skills. Positioning data science for class 8 after foundational work designed to broaden learners' future and link middle schools to secondary STEM and applied pathways. This is about the model structure and assessment. Each module is 12 hours in duration, comprising 70% hands-on and 30% theory-based components, with school-based project assessment and flexible delivery options via hobby clusters or self-paced learnings. The structure emphasizes applied competency and is practical for resource constant contacts where mentorship and simple rubrics are provided. This is about the CBSE Meta collaboration for digital citizenship, AR and VR. CBSE collaboration with Meta created experimental modules on digital etiquette, information literacy and AR/VR. Teachers received handbooks and classroom materials, and large-scale orientations and webinars were conducted to build facilitation skills and promote classroom uptake. This is about the MOOCs and TeacherBuddy ecosystem. Diksha, CBSE and NCERT MOOCs alongside Google Classroom courses offer scalable video and experimental pedagogy, blended learning and assessments. These platforms sustain continuous teacher development and provide just-in-time support during blended or remote pivots. This is AI for All and Inclusion. The AI for All program, AI Aware, AI Appreciate, is self-paced, available in the Indian 11 languages, talkback compatibility, and award digital pages. With broad uptake, it provides pathways to familiarize teachers and students with AI concepts that complement immersive science tools. This is large-scale mobilization, AI for Youth. The AI for Youth virtual symposium and Guinness World Record attempt demonstrated the capacity to mobilize large cohorts for high-impact short learning drivers. An approach adaptable for teachers, PD, student micro-modules, and community outreach to accelerate adoption of AR and VR and virtual labs. This is about the NCERT video engagement patterns. NCERT YouTube data shows occasional large spikes in study baseline engagements, indicating that combining regular high-quality uploads with event-driven promotability yields more sustained interest and mass visibility for curricular resources. This is about the national straight channel strategy. CIT and NCERT trust measure spikes and national reach scale needs a dual strategy. National pushes for mass awareness combined with sustained local promotion and contextualized content on straight channels to maintain long-term engagements. Let's talk about choosing between AR and VR. AR overlays augmented classroom reality in scale on phones, tablets. VR provides full immersion, for which you need to wear a headset, VR headset, requiring headset for facilitation. The choice depends on learning goals, budget, accessibility, and teacher readiness. AR for routine scaling, VR for targeted high-value simulations. Let's talk about the level of immersion in use case. AR provides partial immersion while preserving context. VR offers full immersion for tasks that require deep experimental learning. Use AR for everyday classroom scaffolding and VR for intensive simulation of virtual field trips, ensuring appropriate safety and facilitation protocols are in place. Let's talk about the equipment and logistics. AR runs on common devices, your smartphone, your tablets, Google Play Store, iStore. Both applications are available. VR requires headsets, controllers, tracking, Intel, higher maintenance. Supervision course planning must include charging, storage, scheduling, scaling, and technical support for equitable deployment. Let's talk about the complementary applications. AR suits contextualize and scaffolding of the classroom, such as specimen lab steps and overlays. VR suits immersive simulations like hazardous scenario training or distant ecosystem field trips. When used together, they provide scalable scaffolding and high fidelity practice where needed. Let's talk about the user experiences considering. AR enhances the immediate environment and support context-sensitive learning. VR replaces the environment for concentrated practice. Align modularity to objectives, use AR for scaffolding and VR for immersion required isolation. Accessibility and equity trade-offs. Prioritize AR for large-scale equitable rollout because it leverages existing devices. Deploy VR selectively in centers of excellence or cluster hubs with supervised scheduling to manage cost and access barriers. There are some interaction differences. AR enables interaction with real objectives and a digital layer, keeping tasks grounded in reality. VR confines interaction to the simulated world, which is valuable for replacing hazardous or remote scenarios where full immersion is pedagogically necessary. Let's talk about the evidences and classroom impact. Mixed method pilots on Diksha and PM3 demo sites demonstrate consistent gains. Pre and post concept improvement, typically 8 to 15% is higher, alongside increased student curiosity, more questioning, and reduced dependence on teacher demonstration. Importantly, gains occur when teacher professional development and micro-credentials accompany the rollout. At last, I would say there are several recommendations to scale equitability. We need prioritized pedagogy before hardware. We need to deliver short contextual PD. We need micro-credentials. We need to adapt inclusive defaults, multilingual talkback and offline. We also are supposed to use formative analytics for remediation, First, investments important for phone, for tablet, for AR and Dixa virtual labs first. Then it has to be shifted to the VR Y cluster hubs. So this is all about. Thank you for your attention. I welcome questions and look forward to a collaborative approach.
Okay, so that is the end of that pre-recorded presentation. We have a second presentation that's pre-recorded that we're just going to load now. And the title of the presentation is Harnessing Social Capital for Prompting School Education, Pathways to Diversity, Equity, and Social
So,
Justice.
my topic of the presentation is harnessing social capital for promoting school education, pathways to diversity, equity, and social justice. This particular presentation is based on my empirical research. That is very important aspect of social capital and how it is linked with the school education. This presentation combines theory, evidence, measurement, and policy design to demonstrate how bonding, bridging, and linking social capital enhance school resilience and equitable learning. Based on the theory of Woolman, 1988, and Putnam, 2000. How the resilience is linked with the social capital and education, that the capacity of systems and communities to absorb, adapt, and transform under shocks, that is called resilience, which has been experienced during our climatic changes, pandemic, migration, which are across the country. It has been felt during the COVID, particularly COVID 2019 and thereafter. Social capital has been defined as network, and that is also based on trust, shared norms that enable collective action, particularly in the field of education and school education. Social capital is an essential resilience asset for sustaining access, participation and learning during shocks. Three dimensions of social capital, that is bonding, bridging, linking, are very importantly impacting on school education. The four pathways, that is information flows, resource mobilization, normative change, accountability. These are very important aspects to make the school education accessible to all the students, irrespective of their social background and economic background. Operational indices for bonding, bridging, and linking at school and community levels, that is also part of our study. In addition, that is the bonding, which is intra-group ties, and bridging, the cross-group ties, and linking, which is vertical ties to institutions like school management committee and its link with the higher authority, administrative authority. So those are very important aspects which has been observed as very important ingredient for making school education inclusive and effective for the students who are living in far-flung areas far-flung rural areas in India. Four causal pathways, that is information flows, resource mobilization, normative changes, and accountability. These are also part of my study. This is outcome targeted, that is enrollment, attendance, transition, foundational learning, and equitable participation. How these are linked with the social capital, particularly which has been generated by the community, parents, teachers, and other stakeholders. The aim of the study has been explaining how networks, trust, and norms shape access, participation, transition, and learning. The rationale behind this study was informing SDG 4 and NEP 2020, which is recently the policy has been formulated. Implementation of this particular policy at local and state level. The scope of the study has been mixed methods, cross-state comparative and study, and focusing on marginalized groups. How does social capital affect enrollment, retention, transition, and learning? Which mechanism mediate effects? How do interstate variations in the use of social capital alter educational opportunities and learning outcomes for marginalized children? These are the some of the research questions which have been answered through this study. The area of study was that we have taken up the states, and within the states we have taken up blocks, districts and blocks, and also we selected some of the schools from urban as well as rural areas, private as well as government schools. And the states were like, from northern zone, Himachal Pradesh, western zone, Haryana, eastern zone, Chhattisgarh, northeast zone, Mizoram, and southern zone, Karnataka. These are the states we have taken up from different parts of our country. The interdisciplinary rationale is that educational outcomes shaped by social, political, economic, and linguistic process require sociology, public policy, linguistics, economics, and educational research. The mixed method captured network structure and which the quantitative as well as qualitative narratives and mechanisms. Also, how we have developed some mechanisms as well simultaneously. And policy translation needs cross-sector partnership, that is departments, panchayats, health, NGOs, health department as well as NGOs. So in that way, we have also tried to find out how the cross-sector partnerships as importantly impacted on generation of social capital and how it is impacting on education. So the findings, the positive effects of using social capital, I found that it has considerably positively affected on schooling, the social capital, and then through the active SMCs and parents participation that boosted attendance and remedial support. Then alumni and local donors supported infrastructure and learning inputs. NGOs are involved in mobilizing resources and supporting programs. Village institutions like Gram Panchayats, SMCs, Anganwadis that mobilized resource and ensured accountability. Family networks provided coping with crisis, and especially during the pandemic disruptions. We also found that active SMCs and parent engagement increased attendance and remedial support. NGOs and Gram Panchayat acts as bridging, linking agents for resource mobilization accountability, and family networks mitigated short-run shock-ins during the pandemic schooling time. And that also supported decisions taken by different stakeholders. There are also risks and limits. The social capital can reinforce groupism, divides along the lines of caste, religion, language, leading to exclusion of marginalized groups. Bonding also has, without linking, left communities unsupported. Then informal supports fail to sustain the long-term benefits of action taken by schools and children's school participation and learning continuity. Lack of communications between teacher, parents, and community limits pedagogic use of resources. And the empirical evidence also we have found that there are some limits for equity and there are some risks also. Then challenges, we have found that infrastructure gaps, learning deficits among the students, equity barriers like that is related to caste, religion, language, and migrant status that is there, where the social capital has impacted on inclusion of some of the students who are facing these barriers, but at the same time, where there is no support, we found that the children were segregated and they were excluded from the mainstream formal educational opportunities. Institutional limits, the irregular SMC meetings, weak facilitation, limited roles of local training institutions. These are also had an impact on generating social capital and strengthening it for further utilization by school authorities. And sustainability is one of the major challenges. We have found that community involvement, funding, sustainability and learning process, continuation of learning process, and implementation of schemes. We found that the sustainability is one of the issue, because wherever the social capital is absent, that we found that community involvement has been a challenging situation. So I have also shared a few photographs from my field that to find out, to show that how the facilities are differing from one type of educational institution to another type of educational institution. Like, in the government schools, children were not having proper seating arrangement. They were not having the teaching learning aids as well. The teachers were also not being able to use the activity-based learning. But at the same time, in the private schools, proper facilities are being provided even for computer learning, and the proper spaces are also available for the conducting school assembly, engaging children in different play activities. So these are some of the photographs I have just shown to show that how the children are getting the opportunities, educational opportunities, and how it is different from schools from privately run schools and government run managed schools. So in that manner, the private public dichotomy has been observed during the period of the study, and it is also still a matter of concern. So in that view, we always try to find out the possibilities of private-public partnership. So the final recommendations are like, we found that it is very important to strengthening SMCs through the structured training, clear roles, gender balance, and reporting templates. Then formalize community involvement and fundraising is very important. Their capacity to fundraising and to sustain that particular capacity is also important. Family school action teams, the regular engagement, volunteer rosters, and crisis protocols is very important. Promoting multilingual pedagogy, because most of the places have multilingual diverse groups with diverse learning needs. So in that way, it is very important to promote multilingual pedagogy. Mobilizing local knowledge for contextual learning, and integration of local culture and festivals in the schooling activities. Then also, monitoring and cooperation with the school and community, institutionalizing and linking roles via liaison officers and facilitations, and integrating social capital with interventions for achieving the goals of SDG 4, dissemination of the research as well as the policy initiatives, road mapping for scale up with evidence-based adjustments, developing simple social capital metrics for school dashboard, and piloting and evaluating SMC capacity building and multilingual pedagogy packages in selected districts, and longitudinal follow-up to track transitions and learning outcomes to the children to promote social capital interventions. With this, thank you so much for this opportunity.
And so we're very appreciative for Dr. Matumita's presentation. And we are going to move on happily well ahead of schedule, which means we'll have lots of time for Q&A. We're going to move on to Dr. Jason Walker, and his presentation is Bullying in Higher Education, Leadership and Culture as Pathways to Resilience.
Good morning. Sorry, I'm just going to switch my screen here. There we go. You can see that, yes?
Yes, we can see that. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Always a pleasure. Universities often see themselves as places of growth and discovery. Yet, they can also hide some of the same abuse and power we find in corporate or clinical settings. So after 25 years in mental health and organizational behavior, I can say quite plainly that academia is not exempt from workplace bullying. In fact, hierarchies can make harm easier to conceal. My area of study examines the full continuum of workplace harm, bullying, harassment, and sexual abuse, as well as psychological violence. These don't appear suddenly. They grow from everyday acts of exclusion and incivility that slowly become culture. In academia, bullying often hides behind rigor, tradition, or feedback. It can show up as withheld information, quiet undermining in a committee, or a student pressuring a professor for better grades. These aren't one-offs. They reflect systems where competition eclipses compassion. I'm Dr. Jason Walker. I'm the program director and associate professor at Adler University, leading our graduate studies in health, wellness, and also industrial organizational psychology. I'm very proud to be a clinical adjunct professor with CityU. And today, I want to show how patterns that we see of behavior in higher education impact the psychological health, wellness, and safety of our faculty. I want to thank Dr. Deborah Serko, University of Nebraska, and Dr. Zara Muradi, Adler University, for collaborating on this study. And of course, thank you, Dr. Linder and the CityU team for putting on such an outstanding conference. First, we're going to look at the hidden culture of bullying in academia. Second, I'll outline how we studied it. Third, we'll review what we found. And finally, we'll focus on what I think comes next. Most colleagues, supervisors, and students are not bullies. The majority are ethical and responsible. But when a small number cross boundaries, when emails turn hostile or appeals become threats, the impact on faculty is profound, especially when administration doesn't always step in. This mirrors what we see in other sectors: institutional betrayal, where systems meant to protect instead prioritize optics, where HR will often shield the organization and not the employee, and at times where policies are used as weapons against the targets rather than the perpetrators. In business, it happens when high-earning professionals are protected with bad behavior. In universities, it happens when a bullying faculty member is kept for their grants or when a student's status outweighs faculty safety. Organizations can re-traumatize or they can restore. Too often, they choose the former through silence, weaponization of policy, and inaction. So when we define workplace bullying, precision matters. Bullying isn't a bad day or a difficult colleague. It's repeated, persistent, health-harming mistreatment reinforced by a power imbalance. It includes hostile, intimidating, humiliating, or sabotaging behaviors that occur over time, forming a pattern, not a single event. In higher education, power can be subtle, tied to rank, tenure, or social capital. A senior faculty member withholding authorship, for instance, or a chair who isolates others or yells at faculty. Colleagues who quietly exclude someone from information, or perhaps a student threatening an appeal for that 1%. All fit the dynamics of institutionalized bullying. Generally, 20 to 30% of people across industries have been bullied in the last 6 months. That means 75% of us in our careers. Interestingly, in hierarchical settings like emergency services and academias, within the last 6 months, over 60% of us have been bullied at work. When we map harmful behavior, incivility, bullying, and violence form a continuum, not separate events. In this lens, bullying, harassment, and sexual abuse exist along the same spectrum of escalating harm. Incivility is bad behavior. People who are rude, eye-rolling, dismissive emails, interruptions. It looks small, but it normalizes disrespect. Bullying emerges when that incivility becomes persistent and targeted, eroding psychological safety. It's institutionalized aggression, a cultural problem, not a personal conflict. And violence is the intentional use of power to cause harm. Academia's vulnerability to bullying is not accidental, it's structural. We have created robust, generally inflexible systems which protect those in power. Universities often prioritize institutional reputation over faculty or employee safety and operate within often rigid systems that resist change. They function as hierarchies of prestige and dependence, where sometimes junior faculty rely on senior colleagues for mentorship, publications, or tenure, and that dependency creates ideal conditions for silence and exploitation. Competition, scarcity of resource, and ambiguity magnify the risk. Faculty compete for limited grants, students in recognition, while evaluation systems tend to reward productivity over collegiality, valuing citations over civility. Academic freedom can also shield misconduct, reframing bullying as rigor, high standards, or tough lessons. Bullying thrives wherever performance becomes moral currency. In this study, what we wanted to do was to examine how bullying shows up in higher education. We used a quantitative descriptive correlational design. not to test an intervention, but to map patterns across role, rank, and regions. We drew on the Negative Acts questionnaire by Aronson and colleagues, the most validated measure of workplace bullying, and added items specific to what we call grade bullying, a form of contra-power aggression in which students use bullying behaviors to pressure faculty for higher grades. This is one of the elements that made our work unique. The survey was brief, anonymous, and multiple choice. Our sample included 189 academics from Canada, the US, and the UK, with about 3/4 from private institutions, and a range of ranks and discipline. This allowed us to examine both vertical bullying, supervisor to faculty, student to faculty, and horizontal bullying, peer-to-peer. We analyzed the data descriptively and inferentially, exploring correlations between age, gender, rank, and exposure to bullying, as well as the direction and frequency of this type of aggression. This design helped us not only to see whether bullying occurs in universities, but how it is structurally embedded in academic systems. What we found was both familiar and concerning. 41% of respondents reported experienced workplace bullying in the last 6 months, primarily from peers and supervisors. This aligns with previous research, showing that academic settings often exceed that of other sectors when it comes to bullying and harassment. What stood out was that 28% of faculty reported experiencing grade bullying, upward harassment from students seeking higher grades. Behaviors included persistent complaints, manipulative appeals, and emotional pressure around grading. So, about 10% said these events happened weekly or daily, showing this is not episodic, but perhaps chronic. The acts mirrored broader workplace patterns, excessive workloads, deliberate exclusion, and withholding of critical information. These aren't just interpersonal conflicts, they're institutional signals, revealing how systems use overwork and ambiguity to often maintain control. These harms aren't accidental, they're produced by culture. When we look deeper, clear patterns emerged, all tied to power. Age and rank were strong predictors. Young and early career faculty reported more bullying from peers and supervisors, reflecting dependency, limited authority, and insecure employment. This aligns with research showing early career scholars face a double bind, seeking validation from the very structures that might be harming them. Senior faculty, meanwhile, reported more bullying from students, a form of contra-power aggression rooted in students perhaps viewing themselves as gatekeepers of grades and policy. We also found disparities by gender and race. Women and racialized faculty report more exclusion, dismissiveness, and verbal hostility, microaggressions that accumulate into chronic harm. Together, these results show bullying isn't random. It mirrors existing hierarchies and inequities in academia. Power doesn't corrupt equally. It amplifies what many institutions are unable to confront. Prevention, therefore, can't rely on individual resilience. It must address how power circulates, who feels safe, who feels silenced, and who feels ignored. Across the data, we saw multi-directional harm. Bullying wasn't only top-down, it moved laterally along peers, increasingly upwardly from students. What followed was organizational silence, often, which enables bullying to persist. People often recognize harm, but stay quiet because speaking up feels unsafe. Silence protects individuals short-term, but sustains the system long-term. This is tied to institutional betrayal, when institutions that promise safety instead perpetrate harm, prioritizing reputation over enrollment. And the psychological toll is significant. Moral injury, burnout, and trauma responses. Bullying in academia isn't just behavioral, it's systemic. Behind the numbers are people, and the damage is real. Psychological toll, as noted, is severe. Anxiety, sleeplessness, hypervigilance, and emotional exhaustion. what mirrors trauma. Faculty don't just lose confidence, they lose the core of who they are as scholars. And burnout emergence, the professional fallout, is just a start. Targets withdrawal, underperform, or leave academia altogether. And institutionally, the costs are cascading. Bullying fractures collegiality, undermines governance, and erodes trust. Without safety, innovation suffers. Research doesn't change culture, leadership does. Our findings, along with decades of evidence, show that institutions can prevent bullying only when they treat it as systemic governance issues, not a personal dispute. Policy must move beyond vague statements. Institutions need clear procedures. Who investigates, who decides, and who protects the complainant? Policies must name bullying, define retaliation, and guarantee a fair review. Training must be more than a checkbox. Leaders need trauma-informed education that helps them understand power dynamics, recognize harm, and intervene effectively. Support systems matter. Accessibility to an ombudsperson, peer networking, and counseling. And leadership culture needs to be decisive. Effective leaders model the environment they want, demonstrating empathy, acting on information, and rewarding civility as much as performance. Culture is not written, it's shown. Every institution reflects its leadership. Culture is shaped by what leaders reward, ignore, or tolerate. Leadership is emotional contagion. Empathy and accountability evaluate a system. Dismissing harm corrodes it. Trauma-informed leaders bring awareness and courage. Vulnerability becomes visible trust. Institutional courage means anticipating harm, not just responding to it. And in the end, culture eats strategy for lunch. And if we want to change culture, it starts at the top. This study is only a beginning. We need longitudinal research to track how bullying shifts across career stages, from graduate students to senior faculty, how power changes over time. We need to do a deeper intersectional analysis, understanding further gender, race, and academic discipline, and how that shapes both exposure to bullying and how people respond. Qualitative work is essential too. Data shows prevalence, stories show meaning. I'll end with this. Preventing bullying is not a policy preference, it's a moral imperative. Higher education cannot claim to advance humanity while harming the people who create the safeguards of knowledge. A healthy university does more than produce scholarship. It becomes a living model of dignity, justice, and humanity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Walker. That was wonderful. I also have many questions for you, so I don't know if anybody's going to get a turn to ask any questions by the time I'm done with everyone. We are going to move on to Professor Pandit's
Good morning,
presentation.
everyone, joining me from various parts of the world. I am very pleased to be presenting at Nexus 2025 Interdisciplinary Conference. I am Rupali Pandit from Banasthali Vidyapeeth in India, and today I'll be presenting a significant approach to education, experiential learning, and design thinking. These approaches are not just teaching content, they facilitate problem solving, creativity, and adaptability in learners. So, what are we really preparing our learners for? In a world filled with complex real-world challenges, traditional education might not suffice. Instead, experiential learning and design thinking offer a pathway to equip learners with the skills they need to navigate these challenges effectively. As we move forward, we'll delve deeper into how these innovative methods can transform education and better prepare learners for the future. Today, we are diving into the intricate relationship between complexity and resilience, especially in the realm of education. Here's a roadmap of our journey. Now, I would like to introduce the intersection of complexity and resilience, a critical nexus in the 21st century. We face formidable challenges: climate change and disrupting ecosystems and livelihood. Rapid automation is reshaping job markets. Social fragmentation and disinformation are challenging democracies, and technological disruptions and the complexity we encounter are marked by volatility and ambiguity. Traditional education systems often prioritize predictability and control. timetables, standardized exams, subject silos. These are structures that are designed for efficiency, not adaptability. However, what we truly need is adaptive capacity. This is vital for navigating the complexities of our world. Our study explores how experiential learning and design thinking can nurture this resilience through real-world, learner-driven inquiry. These approaches enable students to build resilience. This is where resilience becomes essential, not just a buzzword, but a deep capacity for navigating ambiguity with clarity and care. A growth mindset, as described by Eager and Dweck, is believed that abilities can be developed through effort and learning. It fosters resilience by viewing failure not as a defeat, but as a necessary part of learning journey. Growth really happens in our comfort zone. It emerges when we step into discomfort, take risks, and learn through challenges. This visual by Albert and Poole illustrates that journey from comfort to growth. Here we are presenting a case study from Riverside School in Ahmedabad, India, illustrating the power of design thinking fits model. This model supports not just cognitive growth, but also social, emotional, and ethical development. As we continue, consider how these ideas can reshape our educational landscape. How might we foster environment that equips learners to thrive in complexity? As we rethink resilience in education, it is important to clarify that resilience isn't just about grit, the ability to persevere, but that's only one slice. The kind of resilience we need to cultivate includes cognitive, emotional, social, and ethical adaptability. Cognitive resilience is where one needs to rethink flexibility, recognize patterns, and navigate complexity. Emotional resilience is the ability to manage frustration, learn from failure, and stay motivated. Social resilience is collaborating meaningfully, listening to peers, and working through conflict. Finally, ethical resilience is acting with integrity, staying grounded in empathy even when solutions are hard. This broader perspective allows us to prepare learners more effectively for the complexities that they are facing today. Consider the constructivist view, which suggests that resilience is built through experience, not merely instruction. This emphasizes the importance of creating learning environments where students can engage with real-world challenges and grow through those experiences. By nurturing these diverse aspects of adaptability, we equip learners with tools they need to navigate an ever-changing world. And most importantly, resilience cannot be taught as a topic. It must be lived, enacted, and constructed socially. As we move forward, let's explore how experiential learning and design thinking can further cultivate this resilience. Let's dive deep into the core of our discussion. How can experiential learning and design thinking cultivate learner resilience when faced with complex real-world challenges? Our research question explores this intersection, focusing on how these two approaches can empower learners to adapt and thrive. Now let's look at the two key pedagogical frameworks that shaped this study. First, I would like to dig deeper into the conceptual foundations of experiential learning, focusing on David Cole's model as shown in the figure on the right. Cole's model is a dynamic cycle that guides us through 4 stages: concrete experience, reflective observation, abstract conceptualization, and active experimentation. It emphasizes action and reflection equally. This model emphasizes learning as a transformative process, growth emerging from uncertainty and action. It is through engaging directly with experiences that learners can adapt and build resilience. As we consider resilience, think of it not just as a bouncing back, but as a growing through challenges. Cole's model encourages us to reflect on experiences, abstract key insights, and actively apply these learnings, fostering a robust response to the unpredictable nature of real-world challenges. This foundation sets the stage for integrating design thinking, which we'll be exploring next, further enhancing resilience with a focus on empathy and innovation. Design thinking, or DT, was popularized by Tim Brown and Tom Kelly and David Kelly, is a human-centered approach to solving open-ended problems. It is grounded on 4 core principles: empathy, ideation, iteration, and testing. The key takeaway here is how this approach builds resilience. It does so by embracing ambiguity and encouraging repeated iteration. This means we view failure not as a setback but as a vital source of learning. Additionally, design thinking promotes ethical engagement. Empathy, as you see, is non-negotiable. It is where everything begins. The reframing of ambiguity as an opportunity for innovation is crucial. It shifts our perspective and opens up new possibilities for creative solutions. Together, this framework can foster resilience by embracing failure as a necessary part of learning, ambiguity as a space of opportunity, collaboration as a dynamic process, empathy as a grounding force. As we move forward, consider how these principles can transform your approach to problem solving. These two frameworks converge into a process called FITS, Feel, Imagine, Do, Share, a unique framework that integrates experiential learning and design thinking. One starts with feel, empathizing with real-world users, communities, and problems. Next, move into ideation and imagine phase by ideating and brainstorming with creativity. Transition to action in the do phase with prototyping, failing, refining, and retrying, and culminate it with public sharing in the share phase, presenting, reflecting with real audiences. Each of these phases, it is not just a step in the process, but a chance to reflect and grow in resilience, whether it's cognitive, emotional, social, or ethical. What makes FIT special is its ability to seamlessly integrate the reflective nature of experiential learning with innovative drive of design thinking. By embedding reflection and resilience at each phase, Riverside has ensured that students are not just passive learners, but active creators of knowledge. FITS is not a lesson plan at Riverside. It's a mindset that reshapes the classroom into space of inquiry, responsibility, and transformation. As we continue, I would like to iterate that this model not only encourages learning, but also builds a robust framework for personal and social development. Next, we will explore how these principles are practiced at Riverside School. Now, we are diving into the heart of how a progressive K-12 school in Ahmedabad, Riverside School, integrates design thinking and experiential learning. This case study is qualitative in nature and explores everyday practices in project-based, student-centered learning environments. We aimed to see how these methods contribute to building resilience among students. We used multiple data collection methods. My data sources included students' journals and reflective artifacts, observations during classroom activities without interruption, and interviews with students and educators. Through thematic analysis, we pieced together how students at Riverside cultivate resilience. The focus here was not on measuring outcomes, but on understanding the process by which resilience is organically cultivated. It is not just about what students learned, but how they learn it, with emphasis on real-world application and student agency, which are essential for developing resilience, and how these approaches can transform traditional learning environments. Now we'll look into the thematic analysis and findings of our study. Exploring the first theme, navigating ambiguity, is the first theme. We explored how Riverside students addressed open-ended issues such as accessibility, inclusion, disability, etc. The lack of correct answers play a crucial role here. It promotes cognitive flexibility, inspiring students to think creatively and adaptively. As they engage in inquiry, their cognitive resilience strengthens. Failure is not viewed as a setback. Rather, it is a vital component of the inquiry process. Students learn to regard failure as feedback, empowering them to navigate uncertainty with confidence. They ask, insightful questions rather than merely providing better answers. On the right are quotes from both students and teachers that showcase their experiences and insights. Akanksha, our academic coordinator, shares that students welcome feedback, fostering reflection and critical thinking, skills that are vital across all stages of learning. Prachur, a student who participated in the Citizenship and Client project, he highlights the inclusive nature of their project, noting that working on a cafe renovation project for an NGO taught him to appreciate inclusivity and diversity, and that this experience improved his marketing skill and vocabulary. This speaks volumes about the practical and personal growth that these projects inspire. Next, our second theme is empathy as anchor. This theme focuses on how students embrace uncertainty, grow through the challenges it brings. Here, the field phase, which involved understanding the problem through community engagement in some projects. This phase highlighted a crucial aspect of education, which is emotional engagement. In our second theme, empathy as an anchor, it shows us that when students are emotionally invested, they develop persistence and ethical reasoning, which are just as important as academic achievements. At Riverside, empathy isn't just a slogan, it is practiced. Students persist through difficulty because they care deeply about their users and the cause. The director beautifully encapsulated this by saying that design thinking begins with the user. Unlike traditional education, where students might feel like passive participants, here they are at the heart of learning process. This approach requires educators to invest in students, fostering a genuine relationship grounded in empathy and understanding. Samriddhi, a student, shared an impactful insight. Experience teaches us what is right and wrong, guiding us to become more ethical individuals in the future. This isn't just about learning facts, it's about developing a strong moral compass. Kumar, another student, identified teamwork, adaptability, and persistence as key takeaways. These skills are indispensable, helping students navigate challenges both within and beyond the classroom. In summary, the field phase underscores the transformative power of empathy and emotional engagement in education, nurturing students who are not only knowledgeable but also deeply ethical. Let's move forward and explore how these principles are applied in the next phase. Now let's look into the next theme, failure, iteration, and the growth mindset. Here, the imagine and the do phase, which is all about brainstorming, testing, and sometimes discarding ideas, is where the students went through intense cycles of ideations and prototyping. This is where creativity meets action. Many ideas fail, materials break, feedback was harsh, and timelines slipped. But Riverside's closing the loop sessions help students process failure. Instead of you failed, the message was what did you learn? What did you try next? And what will you try next? This reframing allowed emotional flexibility to develop. Students expect non-linearity and adapt to it. It embodies resilience in action. Students learn to reflect on what they did throughout the day, what went right, what could be improved, and importantly, they capture those aha and oho moments. Pari, a student, beautifully describes this process as a time to reflect on their feelings and learnings, to celebrate success and acknowledge areas for growth. It is about summing up the day and writing it all down, which helps build that emotional flexibility and resilience. The director shares that these experiences of learning and reflecting have given students resilience to navigate even during their toughest times. The goal here is not to avoid failure, but to see it as an opportunity to learn and grow. This is what builds resilience and prepares students for the challenges ahead. Next theme is agency, identity, and purpose. Here, the share phase of the fifth framework is where accountability and self-awareness takes center stage. Students present their solutions to real audiences such as parents, peers, and community partners. This public dimension gives learning a sense of authentic accountability. Through peer feedback and journaling, students develop their inner voices, not just about what they knew, but about who they were becoming. At Riverside, students don't just learn, they co-create the learning environment. They set the tone and develop a sense of ownership through their voice and choice, which are essential. Pratibha's insight tells us that real-world skills often can't be taught solely through textbooks. These skills are honed through experiences by experimenting, failing, and succeeding. Life, after all, assesses them on their attitudes and skills, not just on textbook knowledge. This journey builds resilience not as a mere skill, but as a core part of students' identity. They grow more self-aware, confident, and ethically committed. As we move forward, we'll look into how these learning ecosystems further support this growth. Here, we are viewing the concept of experiential learning and design thinking as ecosystems rather than methods. Let's explore how this approach transforms our educational landscape. Firstly, consider the role of teachers as co-regulators. This means they are partners in the learning journey, guiding and facilitating rather than dictating. This shift empowers students to become authors of their own learning experiences rather than passive vessels. Importantly, resilience acts as the invisible infrastructure within this ecosystem, built not through lessons but through lived iterative experience. It's not just a skill but the backbone that supports both teachers and students in navigating challenges. Now let's touch upon the pedagogy of complexity. This repositions design thinking and experiential learning as not just strategies, they're epistemological shifts. Here we embrace dynamic and interconnected systems of learning, fostering an environment where learning is a fluid, evolving process. This stands in contrast to traditional models where knowledge is fixed, failure is penalized, and control replaces curiosity. With insights from researchers like Moore, Bosch, and Trowbridge, among others, we can see how these principles are applied and adapted in various educational contexts. Next, we present the implications and recommendations from our finding. What does this mean for educators? First, it is essential to normalize failure by making it visible, not as a shame point, but as a learning loop. By embedding cycles of prototyping and reflection, we can shift the view of failure from a negative outcome to a vital learning process. Next, even with limited resources, we can implement small-scale models that foster growth, building trust-based cultures that prioritize curiosity and care can significantly enhance learning environments. This approach can nurture resilience and foster a supportive community. Moreover, we should shift from subject silos to interdisciplinary inquiry. Learning could be grounded in community relevance rather than abstraction. This means rethinking our assessment methods to place greater emphasis on feedback and reflection. It's about creating a space where teacher acts as reflective, experienced designers, guiding students through their learning journeys. Finally, even in resource-constrained settings, small shifts like reflection circles and community mapping can make resilience both teachable and tangible. These practices can transform challenges into opportunities for growth. Let's bring this all together by moving from just surviving within broken systems to truly transforming them. Key point number 1. Resilience is not about merely surviving. It's about harnessing our tools through experiential learning and design thinking to empower learners to reimagine and reshape the world around them. Secondly, being future ready isn't just about having skills. It's about being ethically grounded and emotionally agile. These qualities will help learners navigate and thrive in complexity. Lastly, Preparing learners for complexity involves letting them experience it safely, reflectively, and collaboratively. This is the essence of experiential learning and design thinking. Thank you for joining me on this journey towards a transformative approach to learning. I welcome your thoughts, questions, and collaborations as we welcome collectively to explore what a resilient pedagogy looks like.
Okay, so that takes us to the Q&A part of our session. I'm going to ask Dr. Makwena, Dr. Walker, and Professor Pandit to turn on their microphones and videos. We do have a couple of other participants for this session who may or may not be able to access their personal panelist link in order to participate in the Q&A. So hopefully I have resent the links. Hopefully that will work. In the meantime, we'll proceed. And Dr. Moquin, I'm going to start with you since you got us launched, and that made me think a lot of things in terms of your
Okay.
talk. I'm also going to ask the audience to please put any questions for the panelists into the Q&A, and we can take them up as we go. So to get us started, one of the things that I was wondering about as you were presenting was how the weight and responsibility of educating the next generation of every society rests on teachers. And I would like to hear from you because in Canada, we have just, in Alberta, where I live, we've just come off a teacher strike. Our teachers went on a
Mhm.
general strike here, um, saying that they don't have enough classroom resources, they don't have enough support for special needs students, they don't get paid enough. They get asked to do endless free work and they're at school looking after other people's children. They don't have time to look after their own children. Unfortunately, the local government here decided to use legislation to force them back to work. Teachers were in a legal strike position, then they were in an illegal strike position, and they were being fined a lot of money. So they did return to work, but they are very, very angry and very upset. So this makes me think about what it is we do in our societies to support the people raising up the next generation. So I was wondering, in terms of your comment about teachers not always being very effective in the classroom, what is done in those communities to help teachers? Are they being well paid? Do they have appropriate child care? Do they have health care? Do they live below or above the poverty line? Like the teacher is a human being before they can teach. What is being done to support them at the human being level to resource them in order to educate the next generation?
Yes, I'm unfortunately I'm not going to paint a good picture, unfortunately, because the situation is right now, I think a couple of months ago, maybe 2 months or so, there was a study that was done which has indicated that around 70% of our teachers here are leaving the profession because they are stressed
Hmm.
and they experience burnout.
Hmm.
That indicates that they seem to lack um, the support is not there, be it from the government, be it from the community around. So unfortunately, unlike you guys maybe in Canada, where you can just go on strike and say that you have workload, you have this and this and this. In South Africa, things are a little bit different. You know, most of our teachers now are leaving the profession in high numbers, unfortunately. It's because of various reasons, including their well-being. They think that they experience there's a psychological well-being is not, of course, being taken care of, and the conditions on the ground do not allow for them to stay longer in the system. Um, Overcrowdedness, lack of resources, things like that. The reality in especially in rural schools. That's the situation right now in South Africa, unfortunately.
Okay, and I'm assuming the government is aware of that, but perhaps within the
Of
culture,
course.
it is just the norm to some degree. Teachers are just expected to deal with it, handle it, and survive.
Yeah, that's unfortunately, but that's how it is, unfortunately. It is not a good
Okay,
picture at all. Yeah.
yeah. So it's not instructor centered, which brings us very nicely to Dr. Walker's presentation. So he is looking at a different stage of education and a different group of
Okay.
instructors, but there is a theme there, Dr. Walker, that I heard in terms of lack of care. Again, here we go again, lack of care for those who are
Mm,
educating the next generation. And I'm very interested to hear from you. You emphasize that the key is leadership, that it
mm,
has to be the leaders who establish the culture. That is a big concept. And of course, we all know that different leaders end up in different roles, whether they're equipped for them or not. So there's probably a systems level thing where the institution, regardless of the leader and the job, needs to have certain training standards for being
mm,
able to get the job of a leader. But I'm interested in some specifics. In a scenario where an instructor
Mm.
is bullied, let's say grade bullying, it's
mm,
incredibly common at the university level.
Yeah.
What is
mm.
the best practice, optimal response of a leader to that situation? So you're a faculty member, you go to your director and you say, blah, 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 student is saying, I'm getting nasty emails. Like, what do you want that leader to do?
Sure. Thank you. Great question. And like I say leadership because that's what the literature says. And I think there's a top-down, bottom-up approach because we have leaders at the frontline level, right? However, when it comes to institutional policy and the implementation of that policy, that tends to fall on the shoulders of senior administration. And faculty, even in a Senate model, often don't have that much of a voice. That's not to say all universities, and some, like this one, handle things very well. Two things. Number one, we need to shift our language. Because when you look at generally university policies when it comes to what we call grade bullying, and we want to define that phenomenon, it's misconduct, right? It's student misconduct. In actual fact, yes. However, it's also a form of workplace violence and bullying, right? So our policies, as they're currently shaped and designed, does not actually protect the employee, like the faculty member, in terms of that level of support, right? So we just shift it to a misconduct issue. But I think sometimes we forget about the not like the psychological impact, but also the career impact when that's happening to someone. So what one would expect or hope a leader to do, number one, and I've written about it in my column in Forbes, is around empathetic leadership. So understanding first and hearing where that faculty member is coming from, and then facilitating some conversations between the student and the faculty member, and or stepping in with misconduct. And as an administrator, that's not where I start. I don't start with misconduct. I start with restorative learning. But one needs to ask the question, how did we get there?
Mm,
Right? In terms of how do we get to the point where, we talked to some people where students follow faculty to their car after class. I had a student who, different university, reached out 30 times for a grade, and it's like, how did we get there? And why aren't we having
mm,
those conversations up front with students, right? When especially in professional programs.
mhm.
I don't know if that totally answers the question, but
It does. It does because you're talking to some degree about inclusion by design,
correct.
which
Yeah.
leads us into Professor
Good
Pandit's
transition. Good.
thoughts. So I'm going to pull her into the conversation, Professor Pandit. I loved your presentation. Thank you so much. I know that even
Thank
though we played
you.
your video, you are actually here live with us. So
Mhm.
my
Yes.
question for you is actually tied a little bit to my own presentation later on today, which is around shame. So you really stress the importance of treating failure as a learning opportunity.
Yes.
However, we are deeply enculturated, most societies are deeply enculturated to experience and talk about failure as a shameful event. So I want to know, by what mechanism have you successfully been able to manage that issue of shame and shift failure from an experience of shame to an experience of opportunity? Because the baseline, I think, for most people is you fail, you feel bad about it. And so to fail and feel curious about it, or maybe dysregulate it and move through that, you need some skills. What are those skills, and how are they being taught to students?
Thank you for the question. I think it is very imperative to ask such a questions. Uh, uh, See, through my own, I'm a professor also at a design college. I've been teaching for 20 years, and I'm also a research scholar. Uh, I've been noticing in my own methodology, in my own pedagogy, we give the students opportunity to improve. So when they come back with the work, and they also tell us about things like we want a great. I would connect to Dr. Walker here. So when he mentioned about grade bullying, we also have cases like that
Mm,
when the students get after us and say that we want our grades improved. I said, okay, you need to work for it. So when they come back with the work, we give them feedbacks. We tell them the areas that they need to improve, and take that as an opportunity to for growth. And
mm,
that is the path that we show to the students, that you are here and you need to reach somewhere else. I mean, you need to grow not only in your institutional level, but when you are going out as a professional, you also need to grow, so and have a positive mindset about the feedback. So we always try to tell them and inculcate that idea that the learning is iterative, and it is always an opportunity for growth wherever you are seeing that growth is. Uh, you are asking about the mechanism. So these are the things we are actually telling the students constantly, and it is actually honed on uh, again and again when we are teaching them through the iterative method. And what I saw at Riverside School, because it has been run by a designer herself. I mean, we come from the same alma mater, and she's running a school for past 25 years. And I wanted to go and study because I felt that the level of curiosity, the resilience I was looking at in my own students, dimming. So
mm,
I was wondering, can I go and see somewhere that is because these are the school children who are coming to us. So I wanted to go out there back again to the schooling where and bring back some learning from there.
mhm,
So when I went there, I saw that the teachers are actually having a very robust mechanism there, where they um, keep on telling the students that you need to work for your grades. You need to work uh, uh, for to get any kind of privilege. And there are very many activities and the processes that the school follows, which actually teaches them the value of ethics, that even small things like they teach it through that like there is a issue of there was a more lot of a issue of open defecation in India.
mhm,
So the teachers show the children various videos and all that, and the students learn the importance that having a bathroom is not a privilege, and it is something which should be respected. So the students themselves go and clean their own bathrooms in the school. So it
mhm,
is something which is inculcated. There is very small, quite a bit of these kind of processes. There has been episodes of where there has been child labor. So the children learn through the various videos, and they actually go through the workshop. They experience those things. and then they learn the value of having certain facilities that they have in their own lives, certain which then they start realizing that these are not something which is a privilege to us, but these are things which needs to be respected. So the
Okay, thank you.
uh,
Thank you so
yeah.
much. Dr. Domingo has a question, and then Dr. Demeke, I'm going to start with them. Go ahead, Dr. Domingo.
Thank you, Dr. Linder. I appreciate all of these presentations, and what I have seen just in this past few minutes is this meta narrative that I'm weaving together, that it is also a leadership question that word has been mentioned. And I, in particular, want to ask Dr. Walker. There was a quote that you said, bullying thrives when performance becomes moral currency. And that peaked with me because I had always elevated as a leadership researcher and professor, also by my background. I'm interested in these sort of questions of leadership that set the culture and frames of organizations to thrive. And not only is it just the leader, but it is in the capacity of followers to do just that. The question is, have you seen examples, or are there examples perhaps in practice of organizations or specifically institutions, beyond my own and others, I'd like to claim, that have the sense of moral currency and agency to ensure that this bullying culture isn't festered or even created?
Thank you. Fantastic question. And I think one of our colleagues put a similar question in the chat. And, I think what it comes down to is, and I ask leaders this, when's the last time you sat with your faculty or staff and talked about psychological safety? And my guess is you have not, right? And from a leadership perspective, I think like we need to show vulnerability, right, in order to create that culture. We need to foster different ways of communicating, right? Sometimes it's not safe, especially as a junior, even as a senior faculty member, to bring an issue forward, because then often, right, it's like, oh gosh, then it'll go to appeal, then it'll like I'm just gonna see how this I'll take it, right? I'll take that abuse. And when we look at our policies, my guess too is that we don't tend to look at them through a trauma-informed lens. So how are we creating these things? And just like risk, right? In clinical assessment, you don't assess it once. It's an ongoing conversation. So as things are evolving and as our student populations are evolving, and I wasn't taught in either of my doctoral study programs how to manage conflict with students, right? I wasn't taught about, how you provide actually how to provide feedback. I learned from my mentors. So maybe, right, that is the step. And when we think about distribution of effort and we think about rank and promotion, and maybe we need to shift that a little bit, right? Maybe it's not the number of articles that I've produced this year, or the number of books, or the number of, like, where's that empathetic leadership piece, or that connection with people that we need to look at differently in order to solve that issue. And lastly, when bullying does occur and we know when it's occurring, we can't do the whole let's just wait and see, right? We have to step up, we need to deal with it, people need to learn, and then we need to move on. Does that help?
That is wonderful. Thank you so much. And I appreciate that response. It certainly has lots of implications for changing the way we think about assessment and how do we assess,
Right.
How we perform or what our outcomes are. So thank you.
And how we create inclusion by design, right? Baking it in so that when this generation of leaders leaves, the structures remain in place. Dr. Demeke, you had a question.
Yeah. Quickly, thank you very much for wonderful presentations. I have two quick questions for Dr. Walker and Dr. Mokoena. Dr. Walker, I'm just curious, specifically interested in bullying that happens by students towards faculty, and just what is the frequency and severity of that vector of bullying, in proportion to the other way around, because it's a bit counterintuitive. You think that faculty have more power imbalance, um, and also how can leaders differentially address the two cases when bullying happens from faculty to students and students to faculty. And my quick question to Dr. McQuena is, I work with a lot of immigrants and refugees, and have worked in that area for about 15 years. And one of the challenges that newcomer parents face is educating their children even when their own formal literacy is severely compromised. And we've used some strategies to suggest to families of how they can do that. Are there specific ways that you can think of about how parents who are not formally educated can still become sources of education for their children?
Let's start with Dr. Mokoena and then we'll go to Dr. Walker.
Well, okay, thank you very much. When we were reviewing our literature, we did find that some parents, even though they are not that educated, they use storytelling as one of the ways of teaching their kids. So that could be one of the strategies that can be used, by those parents who we think and deem as not being educated, because being educated can be interpreted in many ways. If you say a parent is not educated, what do you mean by that? So I'm coming from a school of thought which says, which of course prioritizes local knowledges, saying that we cannot say someone is uneducated up until we explain what it means, or rather we define what it means to be educated. So rural parents in most cases are deemed as uneducated, but they are able in a way to help their children through storytelling, as I've said. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Walker.
Thank you. And just to pick up on the first question, in terms of severity, that's actually something that we need to look at differently as well, and how we assess risk within the context of bullying. And I use the language workplace violence because it is bullying, harassment, and sexual abuse. So I think that would be a good future study. I think we need to create a scale and some sort of measurement in terms of how do we determine, because we usually leave this to the lawyers, right? How severe the actions were or were not, which makes it hard to quantify. And your second question, and I'm so sorry, my mind is very good, but just very short.
Yeah, I was just asking how is there a need for differentiated leadership in terms of addressing, the two dynamics of bullying.
Sure.
And there's a little bit of backstory between you and me about this, if you remember, Dr.
Yes,
Walker.
I do. Thank you. And so 40 to 60% of people in higher education in a faculty role have been bullied in the last 6 months. Fair? 20 to 30% of people industry-wide have been bullied in the last 6 months. That is millions and millions and millions of people, right? And the institutional effect is huge. There's a lot of risk, number one. Number two, productivity, all the things. People go on sick leave, people leave. The personal tolls are huge. Costs our economy close to $500 million a year just on this and lost productivity. Why aren't we having these conversations? So that would be like, we need to start there. As leaders, as faculty, as people, we need to start there. It is a prevalent issue. In fact, we can predict it, right? It is predictable. We can assess it, we can see it, and we can actually treat it. And it's a public health issue, right? It's a preventable injury. So I think we need to start having those conversations, right? In terms of, first of all, this is what bullying is. It's not performance management, right? It's when these things are happening. And then, like I said earlier, I think we need to make it a standing item on leadership agendas. Like, where are we at with it? What's happening? What's going on? Because we know it's happening. to almost half of our employees. So I think that would be a starting point. I'm not sure if I answered that question. I apologize.
Yes, you did. Thank you so much.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Dr. Carew has a question.
Yes, I have two questions. One will be addressed to Dr. Mukina as well as Dr. Pandit. The other one is to Dr. Walker. Starting off with Dr. Mukina and Dr. Pandit, your presentations also refer to resources. And I'm aware right now that whether it's Africa, Canada, US, there are continuous cuts by the governments to institutions. So what strategies do you have because of these cuts? Because you're going to be losing teachers. The demand for teachers is going to be even worse with the cuts. Do you have any research that indicates perhaps that movement to technology, because these physical libraries are going to not be very useful in the long term? I think most of the material is now coming online. Do you have any research that can be used to go into this direction?
Professor Pandit, would you start, and then Dr. Mokoena?
Okay.
Professor Pandit?
I am sorry, I could not catch his question. Maybe Dr. Mokoena can go ahead, and if
Okay.
Dr. Michael can repeat the question, please. Maybe I lost due to.
Okay.
Okay, Dr. Mokoena, can you start, and then we'll go to Professor Pandit.
Okay, thank you. So far, Doc, thank you for the question. We, at the university where I'm working now, I'm part of a research project which looks at the use of open educational resources.
Mm-hmm.
So we are now training our teachers on how to use those open educational resources to teach their learners when they get to schools, because we see that we are going to be affected by these parts as we have talked about them. In fact, in South Africa, the demand for teachers is increasing. I mean, every day we do need a lot of teachers. Unfortunately, the money is not there to hire everyone. So we have sort of gone the route of technology, where we are going to look at how our teachers can use OERs, the open educational resources, to meet the demands. That's the direction that we're taking now.
Yeah, thank you so much for that information. Yeah.
Dr. Carew, could you repeat your question briefly for Professor
Dr.
Pandit?
Dr. Pandit, my question is that there are continuously cuts on institutions in terms of revenue. So this will affect the quality and quantity of resources that are available in the schools and institutions. Have you thought of ways of using technology instead?
Thank you for your question. I could hear it clearly now. Here in India, actually, the government is pumping a lot into education. Our Prime Minister currently is really with the new policy which has come in, which was mentioned by Dr. Anupam in his presentation. It is called the National Education Policy 2020, which was rolled out in 2020 amidst the COVID. Actually, it holds a lot of promise, and government is pumping a lot of money into to bring up the education and actually making the schools technologically sound. I'm not seeing the cuts in terms of the education currently here in India.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that response, Dr. Pandit. For Dr. Walker, I was interested in your research and statistics. I'm looking at culture from a different perspective. I wanted to find out in your sample whether you saw any cultural differences in
Interesting.
And trends, not from the institutional culture, but from the participants' backgrounds and culture.
And in terms of specific cultures, and
Yes,
no.
yes.
However, what we found, because we didn't look for that, and that's a great question. That is a good question. I'd like to look at that differently. But what we did find when we looked at age, we looked at gender, we looked at culture. Again, if you are a Black, Indigenous person of color,
Right.
across the board, higher rates in both categories with students and also with peers. If you're female, higher than male. And then the odd thing about age that I would like to explore further as well is early career, for sure, in terms of a degree of bullying, but more senior faculty. So the more senior you are, the higher ranked you are, the more you are to identify or to at least say that, no, I've been bullied by a student in the last 6 months. So I don't know what that's about, right? Like we need to do some more exploration there, so some qualitative analysis, but that would be interesting in terms of like what exactly.
Yeah, it's an interesting variable anyway.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, so we're doing incredibly well in terms of time. We have 4 minutes left. My question is around hope. I would like to go into the break, the morning break, feeling more hopeful than I feel right now. So I would like to start with Dr. Mokoena and then go to Dr. Walker and then go to Professor Pandit. Please tell me where you draw hope right now in the work that you are doing.
Sorry, Dr. Lindau, once more, please.
I would like to know, is my sound coming through okay? Yes.
Better, yes.
Okay, starting with Dr. Mokoena and then Dr. Walker and then yourself, Professor Pandit, I would like to know where you are drawing hope from in the work that you're currently doing. Where are you finding hope in these difficult and challenging times? Dr. Mokoena.
Okay, thank you. For me, I think hope comes from the resilience that I see in the rural people amid all these challenges that they face. I think even the strategies that they try to use to help their learners to learn, their children to learn, I think it does make one hopeful that at least things are changing, even though they do gradually. So that for me really that resilience that really it does stay with me and keeps motivated.
Keeps you going. It keeps you
Yeah.
going. Okay, thank you, Dr. Walker. What keeps you going? Where's the hope coming from?
I think inherently people are good. And in the work I do in terms of workplace violence, most people don't set out to hurt other people. This is a preventable injury, and I think the majority of people want to deal with it. So I think that is incredibly hopeful, and the fact that we're having these conversations is very positive. Thank you.
Okay, finally, Dr. Pandit, please tell us, where do you find hope in your work?
Actually, I draw hope from my own students. So when they actually come back to me and say that, ma'am, I have learned a lot from you and it keeps me going on in my life. And I have not forgotten what you have taught me. And that actually tells me that maybe I'm doing something right. So I think that actually is a very hopeful situation for me. So I draw my strength and also I am also hopeful for the future.
Okay, wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
all, presenters, both live and pre-recorded. This has been a wonderful start to what is going to be a wonderful 3 days. We have break time right now. People are zooming in from all over the world, so I'm not going to try and figure out what time zone you are in. You have a half an hour break. Session 2 is coming up. Those who are presenting live for session 2, please log in to your personal panelist Zoom link, not the attendee link. If you use the attendee link, we will not be able to hear you. So you have to use your panelist Zoom link, and we will see you here 10 minutes before the start. Everyone else, we will see you in half an hour. Have a great break. Thank you, everybody.